Hi there, I'm Wazza and this is Bike File, the show that brings you the very best new bikes on the market.
And I'm Paul Johnston, and each week we take 5 different bikes in a particular category and put them through their paces. This week it's the turn of those machines which give you that motocross off-road feel and stacks of fun, but at lower speeds than your average sports bike. We're talking, of course, about Supermoto.
We'll be testing all the bikes today in terms of style, value, practicality and performance, and as usual, the one with the most points at the end is the winner. So without further ado, let's see what's on test today. Our first bike of the day is going to be KTM's LC4.
Next we have Husqvarna's SM 610S.
We've also got the newest kid on the block, it's Yamaha's XT 660X.
And then there's the old favourite, of course, KTM's Duke.
Finally, it's another Husqvarna, it's the SM 450R.
Well, that's the lineup for this week, and a very healthy bunch it looks, doesn't it, Wazza?
I think we are in for a lot of fun, and it's me up first with KTM's LC4.
Yeah, very distinctive. They've always made great looking bikes, haven't they, KTM?
Definitely, very, very cool.
Orange and black stand out a mile. Yeah.
I think the trouble I'm going to have is concentrating on my riding rather than looking at my reflection in the shop windows.
Yes, that's always been your problem, hasn't it?
Yeah. KTM's LC4 has been with us now since 1997, and even though it's based on the factory's competition bikes, they have made some gentle concessions towards making it more road biased than track biased. Now this is a serious motorcycle in a very silly way. Confused? Then let me explain. It's serious because it comes from a long line of barking black and orange off-roaders from KTM, and these have dominated off-road competition for years now. This means that in all of them, with the possible exception of the Duke, you get that barely distilled competition feel. So you can forget comfort for starters. There's a seat to sit on, but I challenge you to get much further than the end of the road before numb bum syndrome rears its ugly head. You can forget other handy essentials too, like a petrol tank that's going to take you much more than 70 miles before reserve, or a pillion seat that's going to keep the girlfriend happy for too long. But one ride on this bike is all it takes for everything to make sense, because this is where the silly part of the equation comes into play. The competition-derived chassis and superb suspension mean devouring town potholes and back road bumps, or perhaps even the odd field, are exactly what this bike was made for. While the excellent brakes mean you can normally get yourself out of any trouble, which you're invariably going to get yourself into. And that 640cc single in there even has a touch of smoothness to it for a big thumper. And it is an absolute cracker as well, with plenty of grunt to play with. Oh, and this motorcycle wheelies for England as well, seeming to balance perfectly happily on one wheel for about as long as you fancy keeping it up, if that's your thing. If it's not, then may I suggest that perhaps this bike isn't for you. If it is, and you know who you are, then you will love absolutely every minute of it. Styling, a very well deserved 8 out of 10. Performance, it's another 8 out of 10. Practicality, 6 out of 10. This is still a Supermoto after all. Value, 7 out of 10. It's not all that cheap either.
I think it would be accurate to say, was it, that you had quite a nice time on the old LC4?
I think it would be highly accurate to say that. What an absolute brilliant piece of fun.
It brings out the hooligan in you, doesn't it? It did in you anyway, didn't it?
Yeah, it'll bring out the worst in anybody, guaranteed. It wasn't my fault, it was the bike.
Couldn't turn it all day though, could you?
But then, when you can have that much fun in such a short space of time, why would you want to?
Exactly, that's it. You get your fill in an hour. Right, well, come this way because it's my turn for a bit of fun now. Husqvarna's 610. Now, you know, would you believe Husqvarna say that this is their civilised bike?
I heard you say that, but how can anything that looks like this, with brakes like that, and a motor like that, and a seat like that, be sensible?
Well, it can't be, can it?
No. Are you going to go and have a nice, sensible ride then?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, good.
When it was introduced in 1996, the 610 was the first off-road bike to boast a very useful electric starter. The S is the road-going Supermoto version. That name Husqvarna may well be a Swedish name, But these bikes are actually now part of the MV Agusta group, which also owns Cagiva. And yes, you've guessed it, these bikes are actually made in Italy. So there's every chance then that they're temperamental, they're overpriced, and like some other Italian bikes, which I won't mention, they could well be all show and no go. I'm glad to say that's definitely not the case here. Husqvarna have a history of making successful off-road machines. Indeed, they produce some serious competition tools. They do claim, however, that the 610S is a slightly more civilised bike, and it's easier to get on with than some of their other more focused machines. That said, I have managed to crash this once already today while playing around on some private land, and the only damage sustained was to the left-hand foot peg. You couldn't do that with a sports bike. And that's it, that's all that fell off, which is very good, isn't it, after throwing it down the road? All right, I wasn't going very fast, but the point is, everything bends, you see. Look, it's all bendy. You can't do that with a sports bike. So, not that I would recommend it, but if you do have a habit of falling off bikes, then this is the right kind of bike for you to buy. This motor is 576 cc's of single cylinder, pretty obvious that, which also means it shakes and it vibrates quite a lot. Now, normally I would complain about that, but on this particular style of bike, I quite like it somehow. It seems to sort of add to the ride, make it all feel a little bit more involving somehow. And it also reminds me of my old motocross days when everything used to shake and the bikes were big and heavy and you really needed to show them who was the boss. But there's nothing big and heavy about the 610. At just 148 kilos, it's light and agile. And once aboard, it feels so slim, it makes Kate Moss look positively overweight. The brakes are superb and the 6-speed gearbox is fairly smooth and clump-free. It's not slow either, with a claimed top speed of 110 miles an hour. So what do we have here? Well, it's uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. It vibrates, there's no weather protection, you can't carry luggage, and the passenger gets a bit of a bad deal as well. But you know what? I don't care about any of that, because that is what Supermoto is all about. They are fantastic. I reckon you could have more fun in one day of riding this than you could in a whole week of riding just about any other type of bike. For style, it's 7 out of 10. It's not the prettiest bike here, but it's certainly pleasant enough. For performance, it's 7 out of 10. There's enough power to satisfy most riders, but it is slightly lacking right at the top end of the revs. For practicality, 6 out of 10. It's uncomfortable, but show me a Supermoto that isn't. And for value, 6 out of 10. It's over £5,500 and you could actually get a lot more motorcycle for your money.
So was that sensible enough for you then, Paul?
Well, I know what they mean. You know, when they say this is their sensible option, it's not quite as raw, if you like, as some of the other Husky bikes, but it's still a serious tool, a lot of fun, yeah.
Like I say, it's all relative stuff,
Of course it is, yeah.
Now, what's confusing me, single cylinder, twin exhaust, what's going on there?
Well, the exhaust system on this bike is a bit of a topic of discussion really with owners, because in that exhaust system is the catalytic converter business, right? The clever stuff. But what it does, it saps some of the power from the engine.
We don't want that.
We don't want that, no. So what most owners do who buy these is they take all that out of the exhaust system, releases the bit more power in the engine.
More oomph.
Yeah, get about another 5 brake horsepower, which does actually make a difference.
Very handy tip, but just remember, you didn't hear it from us. Anyway, it's time for our next one. It's Yamaha's XT 660X. Now, I know, Paul, you're not a major fan of this bike, are you?
Well, it's just the look of it, really. I know it's a big, comfy bike. I mean, like nice big seat. Compared to the others, it's like an armchair, I suppose. But for me, there's too much road bike in it.
I can see what you mean. It's definitely the most road biased thing here, but I think fair play to Yamaha for having a go at making something like this. And I think it could be a good bit of fun. Yamaha are the first of the big Japanese manufacturers to leap into the Supermoto fray by tarting up their old Enduro XT 660 and bringing it kicking and screaming into the modern day to make this Supermoto style XT 660X. Where Supermotos like KTM's LC4 represent the lunatic fringe of the market, Yamaha's XT 660X is Captain Sensible. Sure, it looks the part with its chunky, funky bodywork, aggressive pointy beak and upswept tail, but underneath it all, this bike is an XT 660, Yamaha's venerable bulletproof trailie that's been around since Noah was a lad. If you want a stylish, fun plaything that'll give you minimum grief but still has the capacity to raise the odd smile, then step this way. because beneath all the XTX's bad boy styling lies a very handy motorcycle. It's actually comfortable enough to ride around on all day and can even handle the odd motorway stretch every now and again. It's also as tough as a hammer and as simple as Forrest Gump, so don't expect any reliability hassles. That single-cylinder motor does vibrate, but not enough to send you to the dentist for new fillings, as some of the other bikes here might, and it'll happily punt you up to 90 miles an hour in pretty short order. The handling is soft and the bike is heavy compared to the competition here, but there's still enough control to the whole plot to let you chuck it all about with plenty of fun. You'll probably be faster on one of the Huskies, but you'll be having just as much fun on the Yamaha, which is where it scores big points. It may be the friendly Labrador of this pack, but it still looks like a Rottweiler. Styling, 7 out of 10. Looks the part, I reckon. Performance, 6 out of 10. Probably the most capable all-rounder here, but not always the most exciting. Practicality, 8 out of 10. You could live with this every day, and you know it'll start every morning too. Value, 7 out of 10. It's the cheapest bike here.
Well, was it? Is it a road bike or is it not a road bike?
I think we know that regardless of the looks, this is still a road bike.
I think so, yeah.
But then that's no bad thing, because I think there are a lot of people who like the idea of Supermoto, but would probably be put off by half the bikes we got here because they're just too extreme.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I think in this company that we've got here today, it sort of sticks out like a bit of a sore thumb.
Yeah.
But it does have a place in the overall world of off-roady feel,
right.
you know.
It's a worthy new addition to the burgeoning Supermoto family.
That's a very good comment to end on. In fact, we're going to have a little break now, but before we do that, time for a quick recap. So far this week, we've ridden KTM's LC4, and I've also managed to crash Husqvarna's 610.
Coming up in part 2, we'll be trying to stay on KTM's Duke and Husqvarna's very extreme 450 there. We'll see you in a minute.
Welcome back to this week's Bike File, where we're looking at Supermotos, and so far we've ridden Yamaha's XTX 660, Husky's 610, but in the lead at the moment is KTM's LC4 on 29 points, so that's what we need to beat.
It's what you need to beat, and this is what you've got to see if you can beat it with. It's another KTM, virtually the same engine as the LC4, different clothes. I've never really been a fan of these, I've got to say.
Well, I quite like the Duke. I think it just looks very distinctive, and it's been around probably longer than well, it has been around longer than all the rest.
It's been around forever. Distinctive, you say, I say bug ugly, but what do I know?
Exactly. The Duke has been one of the most successful supermotos of recent years. It's been around now since 1994, and even today it remains one of the most popular machines in this class. This is, without doubt, the granddaddy of factory-supplied supermotos. As we know, it's been around now since 1994, so it's not a new name. The Duke, it's an old name. But really, in all of those years, apart from a few nips and tucks here and there, it's changed very little, which tells us it must have been pretty good straight from the off. The Duke's success is due in no small part to its style and quality of finish. This is one very well put together motorcycle with looks to match. Right from its distinctive bug-eyed nose cone to its sports bike style underseat exhausts. It's lovely. This 625cc single cylinder motor is a cracker, and it's fine once you get it spinning above about 3,500 revs thereabouts. Below that it can be a little bit jerky, a little bit snatchy, and it's a problem if you happen to get stuck in very busy traffic. The trouble is, you see, first gear is a little bit too on and off if the going is very slow, and second gear is just that little bit too high, so you finish up slipping the clutch if you want to make nice, smooth progress. So not really a town bike, much better to get it out on the open road. Ideally, a road with a good smooth surface and one or two tight twisty sections where you can appreciate the superb nimble handling of this bike. It only weighs 149 kilos, so just the slightest push on the bars will have it tipping from one bend to the next. The Duke is at the slightly more sensible end of the supermoto world, and by that I mean it's a little bit more refined than some of the other bikes in this class. It's more of a road bike, a little bit less of a converted motocross machine, and that is no bad thing. It's ideal for those people who like this supermoto style of bike but don't really need that competitive edge to their riding, and the fact that it's been around now for 10 years really says it all. So it's over to the scoreboard for KTM's Duke. For style, 8 out of 10, it's probably the best looking supermoto on the market today. Performance, 7 out of 10. Once you get the motor spinning above 3,500 revs, it's great fun to ride. Practicality, 7 out of 10. It's more comfortable than most other bikes in this class, but still not quite an everyday machine. And for value, 7 out of 10. It's £5,800, but you do get a very well-built bike for your money, making a total of 29 points.
29 points, eh, Paul? That ties it with the LC4 up at the head of the pack.
Yeah, but it's a great bike. It's really good. I mean, a lot of people buy these, which tells you something as well. Loads of these out on the road. Great engine, bit snatchy low down, same as the others. Big singles, that's what they do, so you can't really mark it down on that. Lovely under-seat exhaust. It's a sports bike when you look at it from the back. You know, it just looks like a sports bike, and difficult to fault, really.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately I'd say it's not quite my cup of tea. Maybe I'd like something a little more exciting, which I have over here.
Right.
Now, if we were to say that is perhaps a fine wine or a nice lager, this is a 4-packer special brew. It's Husqvarna's SM450R, and it's about as subtle as being hit in the face with a brick.
It is. It's straight out of a motocross paddock, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah. It does look like it. I mean, that seat is, well, there's barely any of it. I think I'm going to be in a lot of discomfort. I just hope the bike will put the smile on my face that I won't care about that.
Well, I tell you what, judging off that, you're guaranteed to come back with a smile between your cheeks.
As well as making motorcycles, Husqvarna also makes sewing machines and chainsaws. Now, we don't care about the sewing machines, but we do care about the chainsaws. Why is this? Well, because they're aggressive, powerful things, and that's exactly what Husqvarna have brought to bear with the SM450R. Even more than KTM's LC4, Husqvarna's SM450R is a competition bike with the bare minimum of concessions for the road. But where the LC4 would perhaps find itself finally out of its depth if the racing got serious on track, a sorted one of these would dig that bit deeper and come up with what was needed. Obviously, this means that comfort is out of the window faster than last night's takeaway. And handy things like pillion potential and a vaguely useful tank range are also consigned to the bin. Climb aboard the 450 and you'll notice that it is narrow. Very narrow. As in supermodel on a diet narrow. And it is hard too, thanks to the very firm suspension. But what do you expect? This is little more than a thinly disguised race bike. When you fire it up, that feeling of precision crispness continues as the 450 single barks into life and responds beautifully eagerly to every last ounce of throttle that you give it. Out on the road, you'd think that for all its race-based heritage, the 450 could be a bit of a hard and flighty handful. But instead, you'll find the opposite. The sweet instant throttle response and surprisingly potent motor lend some more weight to the fun on offer, while the suspension is a real eye-opener once you've got the bike wound up, dispatching all the tarmac in its path with frightening efficiency. Slow up though, and the Husky's not at all keen to play ball, however, as the firm setup transfers every last bump and ripple through the tiny seat into your nether regions. But then this isn't a bike for pottering about on. This is a bike for the serious supermoto addict who's developed a major habit and needs an intense fix. Styling, 7 out of 10. Pared down to the minimum, but looks the part. Performance, 9 out of 10. This bike's a performer, and that's all it is. Practicality, 5 out of 10, and that's being very, very generous. This bike is not only hard to start and hard to keep running, but it is very uncomfortable. Value, 6 out of 10. Again, we've been pretty generous here. You would only want to buy one of these and spend that much cash on it if you were serious about going bonkers on your supermoto.
Well, we knew this bike was going to be a huge amount of fun, and we knew you'd be smiling, you are, but are you still walking straight?
I'm going to have trouble with the walking bit. I had tears in my eyes riding this. They were tears of laughter and tears of pain. It is excruciating. It's quite obviously made for competition only. 20-minute blasts round a tight circuit, really punchy motor, wheelies everywhere, awesome brakes, too much of everything, no comfort. brilliant. But forget riding it on the road. Just forget it.
A quick 20-minute blast, then throw it back in the van, take it home.
You couldn't ride it any further.
No, that's right. Well, I won't argue against any of what you just said there. We've ridden all 5 bikes now this week. Time now for a quick check on the old scoreboard.
KTM's LC4 went out first and came back with 29 points.
Then it was the turn of Husqvarna's 610, which came back with 26 points.
Next, there was Yamaha's XT 660X. That took home 28 points.
And then we had the trusty old KTM Duke, which also scored 29 points.
Finally, Husqvarna's very extreme SM450R got itself 27.
Which means that this week we have a tie, a pair of KTMs. It's the LC4 and the trusty old Duke. All of which means we're probably now going to have an argument to sort this lot out, was it?
I think it does, you know. But go on then, give me your case for the Duke there.
My case for the Duke, great engine, you can't deny that because it's the same engine as the LC4.
I'm with you there.
Cracking motor, yeah. Bags and bags of style and charisma, distinctive, stood the test of time, been around for 10 years, a great bike.
Well, I'll see you that and raise you. You say it's distinctive, I say it's ugly. You say it's been around 10 years, that's good, I say it's old. This is much more like it. Not only do you have a slightly higher spec of running gear, but as well as that, if you want to go and do some Supermoto track days or dip your toe in the water a competition, you could with this. You can't with that.
I know what you're saying, and I agree. You're right on all those things. Let's come down to the most important thing for most people. Yeah, the old folding stuff, money. Which is the cheapest bike?
You're not going to like it because this is 100 quid less.
Damn. Right, okay, I give in.
There you are, we have a worthy winner, a close run thing, but a worthy winner nonetheless. We'll see you again next week for more of the same. Shall we take 3 days on them?
No.